Hello, and welcome to the Building an Indie Business Podcast with Supreme Rum Ham. I'm your host, Alex Edmonds. Today is a very special episode. I am interviewing someone for the Open Podcast Community podcast. I am interviewing Brendan Weinstein. And this is the first interview that I've ever done, and it is an example of why I don't do interviews because it took us like half an hour to figure out how to record the audio and have the video as an aside. So we started out with, I think it was Zoom, and then we couldn't figure that out. So I went to Google Hangouts, and then we couldn't figure that out. Specifically how I can record the audio on both sides. That's what we were trying to figure out. And then what else happened? All right. So then we went to Skype, and we didn't figure out how to get Skype working. Like, I tried to capture the audio in Audacity at the same time, and we couldn't figure that one out. So then finally he goes, wait, isn't there like a tool that we can use for podcasting specifically? And I go, oh yeah, Zencaster. And so we use Zencaster to record. This is after like probably an hour and a half of trying to figure this out. Maybe 30 minutes because we spent like the first hour really talking. But yeah, it was brutal. And then it was so awkward for me. I was really nervous. You can hear it in my voice at the very beginning. So I was talking like this to him, and as soon as I hit the record button, I get this radio voice. It didn't even sound like this. It'll sound very weird. It's not like how I do the intro for this podcast. It's not like, "Hey, how you doing?" It was like a real radio voice, and I was like using radio phrases. I wasn't casual. So I turned my nervousness into like an actual interview, which I never want to sound like an interview because I'm not an interview guy. I'm a podcast guy. I'm very casual. So yeah. So heads up, if you want to do an interview podcast, use Zencaster. And then if you want to have like a video aspect, use Skype. So our setup was the audio was going through Zencaster and the video was on Skype. So yeah, and then when you're done with the Zencaster part, they have you download it, and it's two separate files, and then you have to merge the files together in Audacity. It's very simple. I could put the video that I used in the show notes. And I will be doing a episode on how to interview someone either next week or the week after that. I have an interesting project that I want to talk about, and I'm in the middle of it. But by the time this comes out and I have the next episode to record, it'll be done with. And how I do my podcast process is I need to like have my notes done, and for interviewing I almost have them done, but I might want to do my experiment first because I just want to get it out of my mind while it's fresh, and that way I can give the best details, even though I have notes. But like my notes it's one thing. It'll be like the benefits of interviewing are you don't have to do much talking, and then I have an idea of what I'm gonna say. And so if I do the episode too late, I'm gonna forget what I wanted to say. Well, okay, that's it. Enjoy the episode. Have a nice day. Bye. Hello, and welcome to the Open Podcast Community Podcast. This is episode number 2, and the guest is Brendan Weinstein, and we will be going through his background and what he's working on right now. Welcome, Brendan.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited. It's the first time I've been a part of any of the open podcasts, so sounds like a great idea. I love the movement and excited to get to know you guys.
All right, so why don't you tell us about yourself, your background, and how you got here?
Okay, so I think than the traditional maker or I'd say bootstrap indie maker. I have a little bit of a different backstory. Mine kind of came from realizing that's the side of entrepreneurialism and venture capital wasn't really where I wanted to go with a product that I hadn't been able to build in full on my own. So that dates back to about 2013. I'm a junior in college, and just like any other 21-year-old seeking extra money, or you're on campus trying to be entrepreneurial, and my partner Doug and I decided we had this little watch business in which interchangeable colored watches could be sold and change colors. When we were in college, this seemed like a hit. We were like, I go to Indiana, he goes to Syracuse. We're playing each other in sports. Everyone decked out in colors. The watch to import was, pennies on the dollar. We selling it for a few bucks, but instantly we learned like that was what's driving us. Like there was business. That was more fun than even having gone to the game that night. I mean, that was like the early telltale signs for me was I didn't want to go that night to the after party. I was like, I want to go, figure out how we're going to plan what to do next. So from there, the next plan was to realize we're on a campus. We have a very strong network between us, right? I'm studying business at Indiana University at this point. Um, he's studying business at Syracuse. Where those two networks and areas, being one in the Midwest, one on the East Coast, get this great distribution. So we're going to reach a ton of students. We're going to get them some watches, whatever the product may be in their hands, and run an affiliate, referral marketing engine, right? Give them a commission. Sell watches that are blue and white if you go to North Carolina. Sell watches that are red and white if you go to Indiana. A few bucks a pop. It didn't matter what the price was. We got to get our names out there. In a matter of 3 months, the view of what we were as professionals was he's a graduating collegiate, or he's an emerging entrepreneur, right? We weren't doing anything special. We were the mindset of wanting to create something, right? I stay with that today. The manner in which I went to create something, I do have some regrets on. Not regrets that I would, I regret about myself. Regrets that hindsight's 2020. I would have done them differently. When I first started that company, the only thing you did and what we had learned was you go and you raise a $250,000 seed or Series A. Right. The goal is to get into Y Combinator, something along those lines. So we sit down, we draw business models. We're going to build a referral engine for one reason, not to just generate viral traffic at all. We're going to do it from the opposite side. I was a college student with friends and the most connected on their phones, their computers, learning in a learning environment on the computer, that could not manage to create one formal channel of communication for our student ambassadors to sell these watches, to communicate with us, and submit work that we wanted them to do, right? It was like, it seemed illogical to us. I know that these enterprise level organizations can, but who's doing that for $2 items, right? And who's set that up yet? You couldn't shop and buy something on Wix without a business account yet, right? Or Shopify. So we were like, you know what we're gonna do? We think that this can't be the only audience and the only demographic that's suffering from this. Those who kind of want to sell something little. How many people can't find a platform to communicate with, and only with those that are on collegiate campuses across the nation? Very, very few can, right? Most things are built directly through the LMS, the learning management tool.
Right. What year was this to be?
This was in 2013.
Okay.
So I was, 2011. I graduated high school, so I'm 27 years old. At that time I was 20. I was 21 by the time that I had finished up, like all of the building out of the business plans and everything. I remember celebrating that birthday. I do. 21st, maybe not remember, but it was a good time. So we're about 21, 20, and 21. Our third co-founder at this point. And we're deciding on whether or not, we think that model we just built is really actually relatable to an organization maybe the size of, let's say, Red Bull. Because I think many of you who have been in college or in college, you've seen those little Red Bull trucks driving around giving away free Red Bull, right? Or a stand outside of a campus hall giving T-shirts. Maybe the Economist, maybe Barnes and Noble, maybe Sperry. Those are three of our large clients during the times. Um, we were fine with that, right? And we were fine with that because our job was being accomplished. Now that we knew we had one communication channel, the businesses were able to create a profile that they wanted to offer opportunities to students on a certain campus. Students would be able to register for a profile like a LinkedIn, find those matching jobs to them on their campus, get paid to do short little gigs, and manage it all in the same way they were managing their current coursework. Learning management tool. We were the first integration with Blackboard, so that through their Blackboard LMS account, you could see your outside of coursework, your externship work you had to accomplish. Built, learning development, career development, as well as the schools began to get relations with employer brands they didn't have before because they were there to market, and now they were interested in the student. So, taught me a lot about the different sides of the marketplace, really. But the thing that I could no longer handle in being there was I did not know how to code. I was not coding and I was not writing this the core product that we were going to be thriving on, right? We're 6 months into a full public launch. I'm still managing a team of developers in the United States and overseas. The overseas, not outsourced, but support team, right? And I go to sit down for what they tell me is, now I understand, a product sprint. We're going to do a design sprint. My first reaction was to yell at my partner, Doug, can you get Greg? We need our designer, right? Little do I know, I'm like, that's how you run as a product manager, a sprint, releasing features. It's called a design sprint. So they sat me down. I'm sitting there going, I can't not have a say in what I'm building, and I can't have to convince someone else to want to build what I want them to build when I'm still giving them the money to build it. It became a frustrating factor beyond not being able to build it, but feeling like I was the only reason that was true. I was telling myself I couldn't, telling myself, you don't know how to code like they can. You're never going to be as good as them. He's a professional at that. Why don't you just let them do that? That's their job. Well, I put together the framework and the idea, the model for this type of business, the business that 2 months later went on to raise $350,000 of a seed round. Ended up raising close to like about $1 million in total capital, staying at 5 employees and close to profitable throughout the entirety of the 5 years. I was able to accomplish that, yet I could not see anything else in myself being able to actually build this thing I wanted, right? I was going to have to make enough money to pay someone to do so. When that kind of happened is when I really started to look out elsewhere, find inspiration, find other, technologists. I'd always been a product hunter like that. I'd always been sitting through, it could be at that time, I think it was definitely product hunt, but there was even, I was using Beta Page existed, Beta List existed, Startup. There were countless of them. I would sit on forum boards and wait till someone would post a new product, but I would look at them all and go, I'm looking at this for who do I think is clever enough to be the one that I want to pick to be my guy. Right? That was exactly where I didn't. It was that imposter syndrome that me and you had talked about earlier, but not right. Like, I'm not telling myself I'm bad. I'm just trying to be realistic to the point of like, I don't know that I will be enjoying myself going through another learning experience. That's a lot different than saying I can't. So I took a step back and I realized if you want to learn this, you got to learn it, and it's going to be you're on your own, right? Coding boot camps are there. I find that to still be on your own, but it was going to be something that I had to reach out to a community, right? Like I was going to need my own resources, not the education system, not my father even working in software engineering. They weren't involved with the way we're learning today. Agile methodologies, right? The world, the the environments we live in. Serverless computing. Like, I sat my dad down and asked him to start teaching me. He's a 25-year executive in technology. He had no clue what one of the words I used were. When I said react, he said react to what? Right? Like, this is what I'm trying to learn from a. I mean, it's not him. It's our generation. I mean, the speed and the rapid um, releasing of new technologies. That's the reason I'm even in the position I'm in to begin with. The speed of technology advancing so far put marketplaces with social networks on the map, which is where my thought of putting together job boards and students marketing on a campus came to me. Right? It was all from mixtures of prior thoughts before. And now I wanted to take that one step further and say that was my thought period. Now I'm going to build it. Right. So that's pretty much where University Beyond was like, I would say 4 years in of its 5 year existence. As you can see, I was kind of wanting and desiring to be able to go and now create and build. I was confident in myself. I've been spending a lot of time learning, different programming languages offline. I did take a general assembly course. I got a certificate in product management at product school. I wanted to know the ins and outs of being able to speak with an engineer, right? It's very, very difficult, like without understanding product management well, to convince an engineer that he better finish this a week faster than he thinks he's going to. And you know zero about the languages he's writing, right? So that to me felt like I better do that if I want to be even in the room first. So when I got through with understanding how products were developed, managed, maintained, and that role didn't need to be the core engineer, that's when I actually found myself able to succeed in learning how to code the best, like of the periods of my life, because it no longer felt like it's either do this or die, right? Like I've now decided to write code, I better get real good at it, or can I use the fact that I'm able to understand and build right applications on my own for my success as a product manager, where my interests and skill sets do lie, data, etc. Like that took a long time for me to realize. And I think that I didn't do enough reaching out to people, right? Until about a year ago, I would say, when people like Alex, people like, you know, communities, Product Hunt, I've been around and a member of for a little bit longer, but communities such as Product Schools, Slack community, 35,000 plus product, enthusiasts, whether they be professors, their current PMs in Silicon Valley, giving us AMAs every day, and like realizing I now had a network I could tap into, right? Community building became the next thing in 2015 and 2016, right? We started seeing communities pop up all over. We see MakerLog, we see Indie Hackers, right? We see communities designed around those like I was finding myself falling into, which is the exact opposite of what I had seen myself 2.5 years earlier, going and meeting with venture capitalists to raise funding. So as I said, I went through a little bit, of curvy path to try to find out that at the end of the day, I really just wanted to build something, which was the same thing that I started with. I just never got the confidence internally to say, I'm going to be able to make that. So why don't I just sit down myself and try to make that, right? Whether or not it takes a lot of learning. I'm happy I did. Today I feel a lot confident about myself, more confident about myself. I work closely with some of my most respected makers that are creating today, creating not for the monetary value that they know that they can earn in a salary at a certain organization, but because of the pride they take in their work, right? The ability to put out products and in a manner and to those in which they would like to, empower. I think the women's movements like are all phenomenal. I think that schools that are doing a lot for for students that are from foreign countries or that are living in impoverished areas, there's a lot of movements that have been able to be built around the limits, the breaking down of limitations of technology, right? You were stuck with an elite building what the elite wanted. If we can all build things, it expands to a lot more possibilities. So I was like finally feeling at home, right? Like I don't need to be the best developer in the room. I can have the same conversation with these three people. Maybe he's an engineer, maybe he's a designer. That's what products. That's what product oriented, folks do. I want to just be a part of the product phase. So I've now been, I would say, for a good year and a half since then, since the end of like 2017, early 2018. I've been steadily still practicing, keeping my skills fresh, but I've taken a lot of side projects. I worked for about 12 to 16 months um, leading the initial product development and data infrastructure configuration, basically, for a esports company called Geyser. That was an interesting gig. It was another great experience. I definitely know now that like just joining another group of people just because there's a group of people is not why you join a team, right? You join a team to be with the people who are like-minded, who want to build like things with you, and that you enjoy being around. You're gonna make way better products, and you're going to be way more enjoyable. Your life's gonna be that much more enjoyable if you get to go home and not go back to work, but go on to the same computer you were at work on, doing the same thing, and now it's just for your enjoyment, right? It makes work not a thing anymore. So I found that the hard way. I think that I fooled myself for a while into thinking I shouldn't even really try to like code. It seemed like a 4 year college experience. I was too behind the the ease in today with the amount of free resources online. I could not recommend it more to start at least your understanding of technology. Start building something. No code is a great way to start that. You have an idea in your head, start making it, put it together, right? If you had an idea, you would have put it together in a flyer on Microsoft Word when you were in high school. You wouldn't have been shy to do that. Now, granted, it's much more intricate than that, but on the grand scheme of things, we took it from am I going to sit in a typewriter and actually go through the effort of like making that document, or do I have to just type a few letters into a Apple Notepad, and will I have it forever? Right? Like, to me, that's the level of difference. Like one is just manual and like analog, right? And then one is to the layperson, and then one is a dashboard with widgets that you can drag and drop around, right? That person knows how to reorder this. They don't know how to manually reconfigure things, right? We never learned the science behind computing. We just learned how to write the language. Boot camps don't teach you why the computer is reacting to a certain script. It just teaches you that it does. So I think, Alex, I think you know what my next step might be that I'm considering. I think we spoke about it a little bit, but that's kind of a little bit of a background on my kind of formal experience as well as personal thoughts on why and where I've come to. I'd like to inform you guys that I'm happy as ever. I'm at home in a community of people who root for me, right? Like I know Alex does. I know I do for them. I know this morning me and Fahar had an unbelievable conversation. And like it's those little things that are coming from people who are not sitting there in your benefit. They don't work for you, right? It's that empowerment that I'm saying made me so much more successful than the empowerment of going to college and being told because you have this you should get that job, right? Having people be there for you is really, really crucial. So I think that the difference maker for me became 3 years of confusion. In the last year, I've been a part of communities. Things have started to clear up, and you have resources. So hope you guys were able to follow along that little windy, brain of mine. But Alex, I'm glad you brought that up. I don't often go back into my past, to be honest.
No problem. So you have University Beyond, Geyser. What are you working on now?
I'm actually working on a couple things. So, the parent company in which I've owned University Beyond, like my shares, protected wise, while I was working on side gigs, it's Insight Venture Group. So the reason why it's Insight is that's what I'm interested in at the end of the day, right? I want to build applications so that I can see what data is being produced by it. The data, in the end of the day, is is words to me. Where people hear things, hear sentences, like I look at a screen and I'm looking at shapes and numbers for a pattern, right? Like that's the way my mind works. So I love visual designing, of course, but the end of the day, the goal for me is to deploy it, release it, so that I can analyze its impact on anything, impact on my revenue or impact on trees planted. If you're, one tree planted, whatever it may be, the understanding of building, KPI metrics. Trying to achieve them, seeing how close you are, fine tuning, adjusting, reiterating, and going after it again to basically hone your craft. Like that's where I found myself to be very, very rewarding feeling in the product space. I no longer feel undereducated or underexperienced.
Okay, interesting. So, you're a very prominent member of the product hunt community, and there was just a product hunt meetup in New York, and you hosted that, correct?
Yes, I did. I did.
How'd that go?
Um, I gotta say that was fun. I'll start off with your question about yes, I am a prominent member. I guess you could say in the product hunt community. I think that prominence comes very much so from just my raw pure interest. I am not always intentionally reaching out to or sharing other people's products for them. It's most of the time me saying like, maybe I just need to remember this, right? Or I know this, like this guy or girl who's building this knows what it feels like when someone else that's never spoken to them before has retweeted or shared their product. Not their thoughts, not their words. Twitter to the tech world is a much different place than it is to everyone else, right? Like it's your life being in some sense. Like if you tweet out your link and it's corrupted, you may not be getting more in viewers to that site. So like when I know when you put something out and you have random unnetworked, right, people that are not even connected to others of yours finding your product, it means you've obviously started doing something correct, right? You're getting a sense of virality on its own. That's what I loved about the product community. When I started out in there, I didn't really know anyone, right? To me, it was just an endless array of everything I didn't know was made over the past X many years. And then when you get into a point where you've now seen all that exists and you're building new tools, I always ask this question. If you're a product manager and you're building a social platform, right? Whether it be funded or not, someone like a Facebook releases, let's date back 10, 15, 12, whatever, 12 years it was, the open graph. Do you think if you were not paying attention as a product or like designer, product analyst, product evangelist, product discovery manager, like that graph was going to lay all the groundwork for relationship, right? The sentiment of that, how to 1, 2, 3, 4 plus people are connected, right? That's the entirety of a social network. It's built on a map. It's mathematical, right? When we search directory searching for other users that might have had the same first letter name, we weren't getting anywhere, right? Like that's why that whole social didn't feel fun. Social feels fun today because any of us can create anything, invite each other in, and we're still keeping our communities of users, but by showing each other what we've made. Not, hey, Mark Zuckerberg made this thing called Facebook. You want to join me in Messenger on it? It's a lot different than saying, I just made such like you can name any application you want to, or you can shout out any of the makers. Let's say Mode's a good one, right? Or Danielle and James. I love Leave Me Alone. Like for me to be able to say for like people I know have made that effort and that progress in putting that application out. I don't necessarily take pride in it, but I certainly feel a devotion to not leaving that product, right? That's the community that I'm talking about. Like that's not buying and like cult like. That's support. That's exactly what you look for in a community of like-minded individuals, right? So I think that's really what broke me out of my shell to realize, like, go for it, be yourself, go work in communities, go reach out to the product hunt users, right? Start talking to some of them. Just tweet at them, right? Who cares if they don't answer you, right? You're just all you're doing is stating your opinion that you like the thing, or if you're smart, about what you had said or intelligent in your field, people are going to pick up on that. You know what I mean? If I follow you, Alex, and someone retweets you that I find to be brilliant, right? I'm now looking at you and both of you in another light. So I think that Twitter, like, and capturing the social wins you can from there, um, getting yourself seen, but not advertising yourself, it becomes tricky. You know what I mean? But I like to take it from a different angle, which I'm going to touch on later. Instead of selling a support angle, I think it allows for just as much growth and learning, but a way stronger network. And I'll touch on that in a few moments. I just wanted to also like take a few minutes to thank everyone that was involved with the project meetup with me. I know Eric is running from Bubble. They provided the space. He was great help. And we had a sponsor, public.com, giving away free $20 worth of stock to everyone. That was really nice of you guys. And Al from Coda has been a super, super, super helpful resource as well. If any of you are out there from New York, we have a Product Hunt New York meetup, event series that we're going to be continuing to go on with. And I'll definitely after this have Alex shoot out a link to that. If any of you guys are interested in seeing and following along on our future events.
All right. Is that it? Did I miss anything?
I don't think you missed anything. I was going to elaborate a little bit on actually how the event went. It was really cool. I don't know. Are you guys on your stack? Like, are you on?
I just signed up yesterday actually.
It's. What are your thoughts? How about that?
Um, I think it's a little bare, but they're gonna release more features.
Yeah, I can see the bear statement. I think that it makes sense to a lot of people now why like you were able to see that it's going to exist but not see it yet is that it was probably more bare, right? Some of us did see that, but it's going to take all of the networking effect of what we're doing in these next few weeks that actually builds that out, right? If it's not mapped yet that you and I like enough similar products, how is it going to recommend you the right tool, right? So I think that those experiences will grow and will become part of, innately part of the application, the way any social platform does. I think the value it adds is that like we all go and sit on product hunt, find things, find the people that made them, but there's no touch point in between to say, I want to discuss with the people that are also using these things, not in a forum board, but in the way we know how to communicate in a social network, right? So it puts right at the intersection all of the missions and value that product type adds with the value principles the users have brought the community, right? It's now a community network of the products people use, right? I hope it doesn't detract from the whole core business, but to me it's fun. Like I was addicted to it the first few days. I'm like, all right, yeah, use that one too. And then I find myself like, I'm like, wow, I gotta stop paying for some of these things because I use way too many applications. Like, but yeah, I find it to be one of those addicting things. The way like upvoting became for me, right? Like I'm like, oh, love that one. So I find it to be fun, but I see what you're saying with the bear. It's not many things you have to do.
Yeah, I feel like it's an extension of Product Hunt because it's like these are the products that people are releasing, and these are people's favorites products that they show on your stack.
Right. I think that if you leverage it in a sense like that doesn't compete with each other, but turns one more into the directory and one more into like let's do it this way. IMDb is a review engine, right? With a directory of everyone that's related to any of those movies. That directory can be very powerful if placed behind Netflix, right? Now you see how like when you're on Netflix and you scroll over or you pause a movie and you can see who it is that actor is and see how the other movies he's in.
Mm.
That was later on than what we used to have to go to IMDb for, right? So I can see a way in which growing down the road, like Product Hunt is that place for categorical, right? Like organized, methodical searching for products versus the networking effect of that products have, right? Like I know firsthand going through with some clients of mine, a product launch on product Hunt and killing it, right? And then you think you're off to the races. And 2 weeks later, the only guy that's off to the races is the guy who's launching on product Hunt today, right? How are you keeping that demand? How are you keeping that communication going? Right? You're just leveraging a big launch and hoping it hit that one time, or are you building a community of people who you can get to become advocates of your product every day? Right. That's where I see your stack growing into versus product hunt staying just the hunting, you know what I mean, and releasing of your products. The next step is how we're gonna all communicate and discuss about
Right. It's a continuing conversation of the product.
which I think that's the community. They're a community, right? Like I don't think building, like revenue first products is the move. You know what I mean? There, I think making sure you have things like your stack where people can leave the money side where you see a sponsored post and go into just where their friends are, right? That's it makes it feel safe.
Yeah, definitely. So you've been on the VC side and you've been on the indie side.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering if you had an opinion about profit sharing agreements like with Earnest Capital or Indie VC.
I definitely do. I'm really glad you brought this up. So that's the reason. This topic is the reason why in many of my actual professional profiles, I have to, and I am often asked about my fundraising experience. Having raised $500,000 up to $1 million over 2 rounds of funding, it doesn't go to you, so that's a myth. That's a lie. You don't see a dollar of it, but it's given me an avenue that everyone comes down to when they want to talk to me. Right? I saw you guys raised like that's that was the stigma. I didn't want to be told, and I'm going to keep names out. I'm going to leave an example, but it took 2 days into having a term sheet to realize exactly why this wasn't going to work. I'll tell you, you know what I mean? Like spending $11,000 of the $300,000 they give you to purchase their SEO tools that are worse than the product I use and is strictly a Gecko board account for $49 is a justification of them saying they want to harness your data to do what they want to do with it, correct or not?
Yeah.
There's no way they're not going to give the data guy they're investing the right to use that, but instead charge him to not do it, right? It's the same negative. That leads to so many other frustrations I can get into that are, we have your money, and now you've started to grow because you knew you had the money. You're a sucker for the money, right? Like Earnest Cap, to be honest, I think I mean I know NDVC does too, but Earnest Cap to me has one of the strongest models in the sense that I read and I was speaking with a few of them that you, regardless of the amount you raise and they're willing to back you with, you're not given all of it, right? Like we don't know when we go into a room and they say I want to raise 10 million, and then that big VC says, how quickly can you scale if we give you 100, right? Be that kid in the room. You say no to $100 million, like almost never, right? But we're coming to an age where we're a period where we're realizing that, like, yeah, I'm gonna say no to that because I can make 100 in 2 years, 3 years if I grow the right way. If I make 100 this year, I'm gonna lose 300 next year, right? Like, there's no way I could scale it 100 times as fast as I ever was and succeed. There's no bandwidth. So for me, it's not about which is the better business at all, right? Like you said, you were in the VC space, you were in the like income share space. I wasn't in the space. I've dealt with going through and trying to work with and raise money from both sides. And I walk in and it's funny, you think it should be an insult when they're like, no, I'll give you like 50 grand and we'll renew again. Like we'll revisit it again in 6 weeks. You're like, 50 grand. Like they want to raise they want to give us $4 million. Like, and then you realize they're doing that because they're going to help guide your growth of spend, right? With too much money in your hands, you have too much ability to spend it incorrectly. So I think the way that they build and model themselves as, well, if we're wrong and we don't give you enough to spend, we won't take a percentage of the revenue because you didn't generate any. They lose too. It's the only way to directly tie the incentive of the guy with more money to the guy with no money who's building, right? It's an unfair paradigm where the rich are going to definitely get richer, but the poor are now the capable, but getting, less and less. So it's like you're not even giving those who have done and proven it the chance. I don't think that that's healthy. I think we will see a shift. I don't think it's heading this way forever. I think these funds are going to realize, not just on an ethical standpoint, on their own internal financial standpoint, like this doesn't work. You know what I mean? It worked for a while when we could see hypergrowth companies like Facebook go from a $10 million valuation to a $100 billion company publicly traded, and then grow that 10 times more in the next 5 years. That wasn't around. You didn't have that much potential. You needed to be the seed fund in the seed round of Uber, because if you hit it once, like, your whole family's set for life, right? Like that's at an any cost thing. I don't think that's where we'll be forever, but I don't think all income shares are going to be the way to go. You still need traditional banking, right? You still need lines of credit. You still need working capital. But when it comes to that stage of maker, builder, creator, this is a beautiful thing to be happening, where there are intelligent enough and genuine enough people like Tyler and Ben and Ernest Cap who don't want to screw you. They don't want to give you too much money that hurts you. They want to together make a business with you. That's the most fun thing in the world, when you together sit down and make a profitable business that works. Like the end of a night of a sprint, when you finish and release, and you're like, yo, and that is awesome. Like, I love our new features. Like, that is nothing I better feeling. Doing it alone because the VC told you had to meet a deadline makes you start to hate what you do. So that was my view. I don't think that they're bad for the industry. Like, we need that kind of level of money. AI would be nowhere without hundreds of millions of dollars of investments, right? Machine learning, nowhere. So don't take VC as like everybody. It's not the right thing for the first time maker who needs a little bit of marketing cap. Not be told, wow, that idea is even better than I thought. Here's 10 times as much as that, go higher. We're nowhere near ready for any of that. You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't ready. I went through an accelerator first, a 3.5 month accelerator, Dream It Ventures. We still were barely ready, right? And that was designed to make you ready. That's also another reason we didn't take $5 million. $300,000 was going to make sure we didn't sell too far of our company, right? It was a seed round. It felt normal. The average round at that stage for our size company was $1.2 million. We took a quarter of it, right? That was a perfect deal for us. We needed some money. We needed salaries and some left over, but we didn't just get rich. And now, whatever doesn't work, we have a couple million in the bank. That would have been like, it wouldn't have been accomplishment at all. I wouldn't have felt accomplished. I mean, it wouldn't have succeeded. So that's the way I feel about the VC. Space like that. I think it's just more ethical, and it's better for a certain audience. It's not better for everyone.
Okay, interesting. So I've been applying to jobs, and I've noticed that some companies they they've been going they've been staying private for longer. Like they go from series they they have like a series D and a series E
Okay.
funding of a round of funding. I was wondering if there is any advantage for them staying private longer.
Yes. So I see what I take from that is not so much as my market intelligence, right? From them staying private longer. Staying private longer certainly allows them to not have to beat revenue expectations in order to release an earnings call that's going to see them not dip under, like, in the after hours. If you start to think about a private company that has cash in the bank and a credit limit on file, that's how much money they have, right? That's how much money they're worth. A public company that was expected to grow by 12% because they've been growing by 12% per month, which is never going to happen, right? Is now growing by 6%. The stock market's built, the price is already built in, accounting for future earnings potential. So if your future earnings potential was 12%, but you still grew by 6%, you're telling me that you now lost your capital to go build that other 6%. You see what I'm saying? Like, if your stock drops, you lose money. So if you were supposed to grow by 10% and you grew by 5, your stock will drop, even though you grew by 5%, right? Because it wasn't as good as everyone was betting on. Disappointment, right? Now you've disappointed. They want to take their money out, and you've already lost the money. So if you're not at a stage where your institutional investors have owned enough of the company, right? They're not going to be an Uber like company where the second and the day possible for all of your executives to sell their shares, right? Um, the barrier to sale is over. Dumping of your shares, right? Does that state any confidence to an investor or a person that you should want to be in that company for the long haul, or that they feel like they probably got the most out of it already, right? Like that's the way I see that. So I think that if you could stay private long enough, why go public? You're never going to hit 500 shareholders. Like, I don't know if many people know that actually. If the second you even accidentally cross the 500 shareholder mark, you have to become a public company. So if you don't need to be raising money from that many people, people, and you don't need to grow at that billions of capitalization rate, I don't think you need to go public, right? I don't think you need. I use Slack as a good example. Like Slack to me was like, I loved it. Everything everyone I knew loved it. There were obviously its flaws. It's quirky. It's buggy. But when it goes public, right? It's now not just that fun, engaging, chat tool we use in our offices and through boot camp courses. It's the product that generates how much revenue and how much do they spend, right? What's their rev run rate? Like that's not what I wanted to be talking about yet. It's about Slack, right? Like I still seeing innovation there. What it becomes, not already talking about whether or not they should have ever went public and is it a bad investment? Should they get acquired? Like acquired already. We were just tapping into we were just getting there. That's the damage I see in companies going public too early. Is that if they're not going to succeed, we never saw their true potential.
Okay, interesting take. Um, is there anything else you want to mention, or
Yeah, sure. I actually had a couple things I wanted to mention. First of all, congratulations this week to all of the Golden Kitty winners. And Fahar for a runner up. I think he was the only runner up winner that got his own design, but that still works. Um, I'm still waiting on my Fahar. But I think that I want to really congratulate too, like all of Alex, all of Open Podcasts for coming together and like deciding to discuss the fact that not everyone here knew how to run a podcast, right? And that we're all interested in doing it, but we need some help. And that's what I touched on earlier in this conversation, and I'd like to finish on is that this community. I try to jump into many different ones. I'm happy I joined this one. I would like to start podcasting a bit. I mean, I know that there's several people I would love to speak to. Get their insights. I think it's really awesome. We have a place to go to like schedule and ask questions about what we should talk about. Therefore, I didn't feel nervous coming into this, and I haven't done a podcast or a live stream in well over a year. I didn't feel nervous because I'm not looking at who's looking at me, but we speak enough together about the false false conceptions we're giving ourselves about being scared of something when we know each other and we know what we're capable of, right? To anyone out there, I have not been on a live stream in a year and a half, right? We had technical difficulties for 30 minutes before trying to get this going. 5 seconds before we started, we finally could hear each other, right? It's not going to stop us from having had a discussion in front of you guys in public. It's a healthy discussion. It's what happens, and the rest of the people that do get that bug the first time in open podcast don't have to feel alone either, right? Like that's that type of honesty and just genuineness is what I'm like really excited to see going forward, and I think that we can have some like awesome open podcast discussions. So thank you very much for having me on.
no problem, man. Where can people find you online?
Yeah, you don't have to find me. No, I'm just kidding, guys. You can find me on LinkedIn, Brendan Weinstein. If you want to, just professionally connect. I'd much rather you guys follow me on Twitter. That's where I live all day. You'll find my, product ideas or discuss with me. If you need something emergency, DM me. I usually answer them. I'm reachable on DM. Never gonna find me on Facebook, for sure. Um, and if you're in any of these maker communities or want to be, reach out to me and I can either introduce you or reach out to me in one of the communities. Maker Log. I mean, a work in progress. We're in Product We're on Product We're in your stack. Like, if you're interested in products and you're in a community, I'm sure we can connect somehow, and I would love to. So feel free to reach out to me.
All right. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you
If
so
you
much.
No problem. If you wanna be a guest on Open Podcast or host your own podcast, um, come join the Telegram chat and talk to me. Thank you for listening. Have a nice day.